They can sign off.
I'm seeing everyone coming in now. So I'll get started. So good morning, everyone. My name is Tony Aline, and I'm the Executive Director of a program called the Delaware College Scholars, which is a college access program in Delaware. And we've been doing this work for about 8 to 9 years. In terms of this panel, we hope to have a really good engaging conversation about what it's like to be a student athlete in college and how that process works, both in terms of being recruited and the things that you can do proactively to kind of get yourself in that process, but then also what it's like to be on a college campus and playing sports simultaneously. In terms of the great panelists that we have, I'm gonna let everyone introduce themselves, but my role in this conversation, is to serve as a moderator. So to keep the conversation flowing and to ask probing questions to make sure that everyone's questions are being addressed. So if you are in attendance, please use the chat box to submit questions, and I'll make sure to incorporate that within the conversations as we can. So to get started, I would like my panelists to present who they are, a little bit about themselves and their roles, and then we could get started. So let's start with Barry. You can go first.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. A lot of information for you in the next 45 minutes or so. My name is Barry Dorman, Associate Director of Admissions at the University of Pittsburgh. My role in terms of how that relates to today's panel is I am the liaison between the admissions office and the Department of Athletics. I don't play, I'm not a coach. I played Division III many years ago, but right now my role is to basically ensure that prospective student athletes who are being recruited by university have all of their materials submitted and in short, assess their admissibility to the University of Pittsburgh. Pitt is a member of the Ncaa Division I. We offer 19 different sports for both men and women. We offer full scholarships, which include tuition, room and board and living expenses. We also offer scholarships as little as book allowances for students. Also, many students at D1 programs like Pitt are preferred walk-ons, which means they're playing for the love of the sport and they are not receiving any types of scholarships. So that's a little bit about me. That's a little about my role at Pitt, and I will turn it over to Dave.
Great, thanks, Barry, and thanks, Dr. Aline. I appreciate it. So my name is Dave Frohlmann. I'm Associate Director of Admission at Ohio Wesleyan University in Delaware, Ohio. And a little bit of my background, I'm a regional representative. I actually live in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. I cover Pennsylvania all the way up through New Jersey for OWU, as we affectionately refer to ourselves. But my first career was as a men's basketball coach. I coached at Xavier University, Division I. Coached at Westminster College, which at the time was NAIA, kind of more aligned with Division II. And then I coached at Dickinson College in Carlisle, Division III. And I also coached 3 years in high school. If any of you have ever seen or heard of the movie Hoosiers, I coached at Milan High School, which is the school that inspired the movie Hoosiers. I coached there for 3 years. So I've been in high school and I've been in college. And now as an admissions representative for Ohio Wesleyan, I do work very closely with our coaches who are recruiting athletes. We're Division III, and we have actually we have 2 teams today. Our field hockey team and our men's soccer team are involved in the NCAA postseason playoffs in their respective sports. I'm excited about that. But I do work very closely with the coaches, and we have 24 sports. The 2 that I mentioned are 2 of the 24, but a lot of opportunities for high school athletes that are interested in moving on and playing at the college level. And unlike the University of Pittsburgh, you may well know, we do not offer athletic scholarships, but I can assure you that every member, well, 99% of our students have some sort of a merit award, so some sort of scholarship, but it's not an athletic scholarship at Ohio Wesleyan and OWU. So thank you very much. Look forward to the panel. And Joel, off to you.
Great. Thanks, Dave. And thanks for hosting, Dr. Aline. So
I'm Joel Sensor. I work at Harlem Lacrosse. I've had a variety of roles within the organization. Right now, I'm the Chief Pathing Officer, which means we have 1,300 kids in our program. I know it's Harlem Lacrosse, but we exist in Boston, New York and Harlem and the South Bronx, North Philadelphia, East and West Baltimore, and then Compton and Inglewood in LA. My job is to kind of facilitate the admissions and our different students' unique personal path, whether it's middle school, choosing a middle school, choosing a high school, or choosing college or post-secondary option. I think I'm on this panel because last year we helped facilitate for 65 student athletes at Harlem Lacrosse who joined a wide variety of different teams at different divisions. So I kind of come at it from the other angle of Barry and Dave, where they come from, and they are working at an institution. Dr. Eileen and I are working at programs where we are trying to place student athletes oftentimes in said institutions. So a little bit of a different perspective, but excited to be on the panel and whatever I can offer on from the Harlem Lacrosse perspective. So thank you.
So thank you, everyone. And I guess to start the conversation, I'll take off to a little bit from where you left off, Joel, in the sense of understanding what it means to be a student athlete at a college. So I would love our panelists to talk a little bit about just being interested in playing sports at the college level, and maybe give a brief breakdown of the different levels, but then also general things that you can do to kind of demonstrate your interest if you are athletic and want to continue it at a different level in college.
Yeah, so I think to me, I'd say 5 different levels is kind of how I see it. I know there's technically 3 divisions, but if you want to play college athletics, there's Division 1. Barry can talk definitively around that gives athletic scholarships out as part of the experience. It's usually a full-time experience to be an athlete. There is kind of how we describe it at Harlem Lacrosse. Some people absolutely love playing a sport, and that's critical, and they want it to be part of their full college experience, and to have a full year of, if you're a football player, you not only have summer and fall playing football, but you also have spring football, and it's the same thing in lacrosse, fall and winter. And I wouldn't go to say it's a job, but it's definitely a much more full commitment. And obviously there's the financial piece of getting athletic scholarship tied to it. Division 2 is kind of straddles between Division 2 and Division 3, where you can get athletic scholarships. It's a little less competitive than Division 1. You have to get through NCAA clearinghouse and compliance. You still play year round, but it's not, I don't think, at the same level of commitment as Division 1. Division 3 is very different. Oftentimes these schools don't have fall or spring or an alternative season as part of that experience. There's no athletic money. To Dave's point, there's lots of merit and need-based aid that exists at those schools. So I wouldn't say necessarily the packages are worse. They're just going to be different because there's not an athletic financial piece to it. And then there's also community colleges and NAIA schools, which are, I don't know if Barry and Dave, you can, I don't know if NCAA, I don't know if junior college sports are governed by the NCAA. But there's obviously the junior college route too that you can go, which is a 2-year. You get an associates. Sometimes they have athletic scholarships. And then there's the NAIA, which is not governed by the NCAA, oftentimes it's a different kind of school, but that doesn't make it worse or better. It just makes it different. So and oftentimes those schools do have tied funding to sports. So there's a wide variety of different experiences and divisions, and where you fit in as part of that. I would say the main thing, if you want to do that, if you want to play college sports, is you have to like it. If it's an important part of your college experience where you want, because you're going to play a lot of it at that level. So that would be my first push to anybody, is there's lots of opportunities and lots of different divisions, but you play a lot of that in a singular sport in college. So I think the first thing is, do you like it? And is that something that helps you in your own life? Like, as organizing your day and having a collaborative environment where you're going to have people around you. I don't know the answer to that, but that I think is the first question is, do you like it enough to do it a lot?
That's I think a great way to start and to begin assessing what maybe your next steps are. Do you have a passion for the sport? Is it something that you can see yourself doing, not necessarily as a profession, but for the next 4 or 5 years in college? The student athletes that I come in contact with do equate it to really having 2 full-time jobs because you are a student and you are in class for anywhere between 12 and 15 or 18 hours per week. Student athletes are studying engineering, they're studying nursing, they're studying accounting. So the time in the classroom is required, and it's necessary for life after those 4 or 5 years. Once the lights in the stadium go off, it's time for most student athletes to move on to their jobs. So it is a commitment. Division I athletes are required to have a maximum of 20 hours per week in a sport-related activity during any week. So think about that. Think about being in class all those hours and doing your homework and writing your papers and doing your group assignments, but also 20 hours of sport-related activity during the week. Now that means that 20 hours is from when practice starts until practice is over. It doesn't count getting ready for it. It doesn't count pregame meals. It doesn't count the things that maybe you have to do to prepare for your weightlifting sessions and things like that. The 20 hours is just the athletic related hours in the week. So you're spending lots of time. You have to have a passion for it. At a Division I university like Pitt, we compete in the NCAA. We are members of the Atlantic Coast Conference for most of our sports. Any given academic year, using fall as an example, we will probably admit about 150 recruited athletes across all of our sports. Some of those recruited athletes are receiving full scholarships. Football, basketball at Pitt, football, basketball, volleyball, and gymnasts are the only sports that are required to have either a full scholarship or no scholarship at all. They're preferred walk-ons. The other sports, students can receive anywhere from books for the year as our scholarship to full tuition, room and board. But most of them in the sports like softball or baseball, maybe soccer are possibly receiving partial scholarships. So it's not always the full ride that students are getting. And those are the ones you hear about because that's the 85 football players or the 12 basketball players. Again, back to the commitment, you have to have a passion for it because you're spending lots of time and you need to be prepared to make sacrifices.
You know, I was when Joel was talking about 5 levels, I thought 2 of the levels might be the 2 that I'm going to add. So we'll go up to 7 levels, but the 2 other levels are intramural and club. And I think it's important for you. And by the way, I'm going to put my contact information into the chat. I'm trying to get that in there. There's my contact information. But in any event, as both Joel and Barry said, the commitment has to be there, and the commitment has to be there no matter if you're a college athlete. The commitment has to be there no matter if you're Division I, Division II, Division III, community college, or NAIA. The commitment is a little different for club and intramural. But again, if you're going to be involved in intercollegiate sports, the commitment has to be there. And the length of time you're going to spend in your sport will be a little different at Division III than it is at Division II or Division I. But it still is a serious commitment. And unlike intramurals and possibly club, but unlike those two, you need to be at practices. You're going to travel for games. Now, I would say pretty much typically in Division III. For instance, our 2 teams that are competing today in the NCAA playoffs. One is traveling from Delaware, Ohio to New Jersey. And so that's a bit of a trip, but that is unusual. Most of the trips are going to be not involving overnights in Division III. And our men's soccer team is hosting. So, we're at home for that. But when the teams are traveling in their regular seasons, most of the trips are going to be day trips, and many of them will be a couple hours or less. So that's another thing in terms of time commitment they have in mind. But again, I think the one thing that I emphasize for athletes, if you're an athlete at the Division III level, it's not going to be, it should be fun. Certainly, it's not going to be a walk in the park, though, where I'm showing up when I want to show up and doing what I want to do when I want to do it. You're going to be involved in practices and games on a scheduled basis, and commit not an insignificant amount of time to it as well.
So thank you all. I'm decoding a question that we just have that was just submitted. So there's multiple layers to it. So I will put it out there, and then the panelists, each of us could kind of address it. So the question is from a parent trying to best support their student athlete in terms of being recruited. So in terms of getting yourself exposed to the colleges and to the college coaches, how do you navigate a club team or AAU team and your high school program? And then also your thoughts on using recruiting services. So whether it's kind of paying to be a part of X organization to kind of get your profile and video out. So how would you kind of advise or give comments about the high school program versus the AAU program or travel team, and then also paying to recruiting services?
Well, I'm somewhat limited in terms of my familiarity, I have to admit, with recruiting services, but I will say this, that our coaches do recruit, and they are aware of events over the summers in which a baseball player, a lax player, a soccer player, or a basketball player is involved. They are aware and they are attending those. I also think that it's for us, and I would say in general at Division III, it is important for students and student athletes to go on websites, and once they've identified schools that might be of interest to them, if you go on our website, OWU website, and you go to athletics and you go to a particular sport, you will see something that you can fill out. It's a questionnaire, but get recruited. And you click on that, you fill out the questionnaire, and then you're on the radar screen of the particular coach. And you're not making a commitment to OWU, but you're indicating, hey, I'm interested, and you're raising your hand and say, hey, please check me out. And the coach will check you out and then do his or her evaluation and see how you may fit with the team, and certainly be in touch with you if they're interested and they're recruiting you. But I would say at the Division III level, frequently it's a matter of the initiative of the student athlete, not all the time. I mean, the coaches are going to find you or some of you, but I think that's an important aspect of things in many cases at the Division III level.
Just to follow up on that, I dropped in just an example of the questionnaire that you were talking about, Dave. It's the one the University of Pittsburgh has on its website. And when you guys have a few minutes after you're done today, take a look and you'll see that all of our sports are represented there. You fill out the questionnaire, and it is a way to get yourself on the radar of the different teams. At Division I, it's a fairly sophisticated recruiting process. There are lots of services that the university subscribe to help them learn about prospective student athletes. High school coaches, athletic directors can play a role in assisting students to get on the radar of the schools that they might be interested in. I think one way that I would like to recommend students to pursue are the camps that the universities tend to offer. Almost all of us offer some sort of summer, spring, fall camps in almost every sport. And it's a way to not just see the campus, but also get noticed by the coaching staff. And that's a way a lot of student athletes who might just be a little bit under the radar get put on the map of universities. So definitely check out the camps that universities offer.
Yeah, I'm saying this at risk of sounding a little bit old school, and I don't want to be, but I would say that there's amazing things that those recruiting services can do when it comes to like highlight films and like helping like edit reels or do things like that. But I don't know if I generally think the student is going to be, and their family is always going to be the best advocate for themselves oftentimes, especially because they know what they want the most. And I would say that a lot of these, a lot of the, like, if the other piece is if a lot, to Barry's point, like a lot of these college coaches are from Division I to junior college, they're pretty sophisticated recruiters. I would say sometimes if students spend as much time practicing and getting good, like they're going to find a way to get noticed. Like the students are oftentimes the reels and the nice emails, or there's going to be no substitute for great film of a student playing their sport. Like that's just the truth. Like, and that's the truth. So I would say like I think those things can potentially help, and they can definitely help like make a highlight film and help you curate your emails to schools and maybe help you to figure out what's most important to you and what schools to go after. But I think coaches generally like to hear from students themselves. They like to meet the families. They want to know who's joining their program. So I would say like those services can be helpful in certain ways, but I would say I genuinely think the student athlete is going to be, and their families are going to be the best advocates generally for themselves and what they want. So
yeah, just to add to a different layer to this. I'm an admissions person first, and one of my roles happens to be a liaison to the athletic department. So the thing that I think is so important and so special to a student's success is choosing the right place for them based on lots of different things. What the softball coach is like is a part of it, certainly, but do I fit into the atmosphere? When I walk on campus, do I feel like I belong there? Does it have the academic major or academic support that I need? What's the track record of graduates, and are the accounting graduates being offered jobs when they leave? So all of these things, and also looking in the mirror and say, what kind of student am I? What am I going to be able to be successful at A, B, and C college? Will I be admitted to that institution? And am I going to be happy and successful there? So those are all pieces of the puzzle that really need to fit together. And athletics is absolutely one of them, particularly if it's important to you. But it's just one piece of the puzzle for most student athletes.
And I would again echo both of my colleagues here. But what Joel said about the recruiting services, they are money-making businesses, and the challenge for you, parents or athletes, is to figure out if it's going to be worth your while. So I'd say I would approach them with a healthy dose of skepticism, and maybe don't shut them out totally, but realize that they are money-making business, and then figure out if they can be of help to you. You feel like their service, again, your return on investment, is it going to be worth the investment that you're putting out for that particular service, whatever it is.
So the one thing I will add to this discussion, and it kind of leads into the next question, is for parents and students to really be honest about their ability and to find the right college that would fit their athletic ability. So with the students that I work with, and in a previous life, I was a basketball and football coach. So I helped students go D1, D3, across the board. And at times, people are overly aware of the D1 full scholarship opportunity but maybe your skill level is not geared toward that D1 full scholarship opportunity. And at times you have to be realistic and see what different level of the various levels may be best suited for you. Maybe it is intramural, being able to continue the sport that you love and being able to play it at a campus. Maybe it is that D3 level. So with that kind of concept in mind, I would love for our panelists to discuss, I guess, the misconception of it's all or bust with a D1 type of school, and not overlooking other levels. So whether it's D2, D3, or other. But then also with that in mind, at what point should students try to reach out to colleges and coaches? So again, the misconception of the different levels and not overlooking the D3s, but then also when should you reach out to coaches and colleges about student athlete interests?
I gave an example when the panelists and I were kind of having our pre-meeting about this last week, and I often use my daughter as an example. She played softball all her life and knew she was not a D1 softball player. She's about 5'0" and was a pretty darn good high school NAAU pitcher, 5'3" actually, and she found a home at a Division III school. And she got an amazing education. She played softball all 4 years. She had a chance to play in the NCAA tournament, which was the highlight of probably her personal softball life. But she knew that's what she wanted. She wanted to go to a place where she could make an impact for all 4 years. She had a couple of walk-on opportunities at Division II schools. Didn't want to do that. She wanted to go and get an education, get an impact, make an impact in softball in the classroom. And now she's in graduate school, and softball is in the rearview mirror for her. But that's the choice that she made. So absolutely assessing your ability level and the commitment level that you want to make is very important for your happiness and for your success, both in the classroom and on the athletic field.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just chime in. I think when we do our like questionnaires with our students and families to understand like that's an important first step for us to understand how we can best advocate for what colleges or post-secondary opportunities that they're looking for. One of the first athletic questions we ask is, would you rather sit on the bench for 2 to 3 years and maybe play, or would you rather play right away? And I don't know if some students are always prepared to answer that question, but it's like, I think it's an important one. I think it's like being the 30th or 35th person on a roster as a freshman is like humbling. And it takes some like soft skills to be able to not play for a while, right? And if that's what you want because you want to be at a specific program or a specific school, that's fine. But just I think going in eyes wide open and just honest about that you're okay with that is definitely part of that. And then I think definitely with the Division I, Division II, Division III thing, sometimes something I just try to let our student athletes understand is that it's not necessarily always where you start, it's where you end. And so are you going to a program that's actually going to help you grow and become your best self and develop? And that might not, those things, it might be at a Division III school where you're going to start right away. And that might be what motivates you and is a catalyst for you. I don't know. It's hard for me to answer that question because I really think it's personally motivated about what kind of program are you, to Barry's point about what kind of school are you going to be your best self at and feel safe and understood and like you have a place there. I think it's the same thing with a program. Where are you? And if that means is the program one where it's a prestige program and you might be the 10th person on the bench right now, or is it somewhere where you're going to have the you're going to start right away? I don't know the answer to that, but I think it's a question people should ask and think about. So,
yeah, thank you. Yeah, I don't have to know anything about any student that I'm talking to, and I don't have to know anything about any of the students that are participating and in the audience today to know that there are a lot of schools at which you could be a good fit. And it gets back to what Barry was talking about, I think initially, and what Joel mentioned as well. assessing the fit as best you can. And that's the athletic fit, the academic fit, and just again, the idea of that chemistry between you and the campus, you and the coaches, faculty members, whatever. And you can do that, over time as you dig in. But assessing what you see as your athletic level, and the coaches will help you there, because if you think you're a Division I athlete and you're not being recruited by Division I coaches, that would tell you something as well. But there are a lot of schools at which you could be a good fit. And as far as when to start, students seem to be making their decisions earlier and earlier. And when I say earlier and earlier, not in ninth grade, probably not in 10th grade, but certainly many have their lists and have pretty well narrowed down their choices by junior year. And with that in mind, I would say that late in your sophomore year, and I'm thinking of the opportunity to be seen over the summer if you're participating, particularly for athletes that are participating in summer athletic activities, and sports club teams and such, or showcases, that type of thing. I think that between sophomore and junior year is a good time for coaches to be taking a look at you. So if you're reaching out to coaches, I'd say maybe the end of your sophomore year, definitely by early in your junior year, would be my advice as far as the time to reach out.
And you also find there are different rules and regulations, whether it's D1, D2, or D3. For any of them, any levels, students can reach out to the universities and coaching staffs. But as far as D1, there are rules, regulations as far as when they can actually initiate contact with students. There are rules about the number of times they can contact. There are rules about the number of texts they can send. I'm going to drop in the chat a couple of links to the Ncaa Eligibility Center, and you can browse through that and see some of these things I'm talking about. You have to, if you're thinking about a D1 or D2 program, there's a registration process that you go through. There's a cost to it. I think it's $80 to register with the Eligibility Center. But there are times that you can do that, when you're allowed to do that. But at most of the questions that will come up regarding eligibility, regarding admissions, you can find at the websites that I just dropped in the chat.
So again, a reminder, if anyone has any questions, please insert them in the chat or Q&A area, and I'll make sure to bring them up. Another point I would love for our panelists to talk about is, I guess, another misconception in the sense of the level of competition at each level. So for instance, sometimes people think that I don't want to play D3 because it's not competitive. And I can speak from personal example. I played D3 football. It was some pretty tough football. And just a reminder that everyone who is playing in college, they're playing at a much higher level, and it's not high school. So just speaking about the level of commitment that student athletes have at that college level, regardless of D1, D2, D3, or even intramural, because at my university, intramural basketball, it was tough. So just speaking about the level of dedication that an athlete has in terms of taking it serious, and the competition that will be there regardless of level.
Well, again, I think that I think we led with this, the idea that no matter what level you're playing at, unless you're involved with intramurals and club, if you're involved in an intercollegiate sport, they're going to be serious competitors on your team, and they're going to be serious competitors on the other teams. And you will find that the competition is at a very high level. And again, the Division I is what we all watch. On those of us that watch on TV, we see the Division I competitors, and that's generally at a very high level. And so Division I is competing against other Division I athletes, and they're kind of on a more or less level playing field. Not all are equal, but more or less level playing field. The same is going to be true at Division II and Division III. most definitely, I would say. So the level of competitiveness will be a high level, commensurate with the abilities of the folks, throughout that particular level of competition.
Yeah, so I feel like I'm in a weird place here because I feel like lacrosse is kind of an idiosyncratic sport a little bit, but I'll describe it a bit because I imagine lots of sports are idiosyncratic and that you need to like think about your own sport in kind of like and understand it and what it's going to look like at the college level. So lacrosse, I would say where Dr. Aline went to school, for example, is a Division III school. They would beat probably half of the teams that are in the Division I that play Division I lacrosse. I don't know. Don't quote me on that, and I'm gonna get. But there's a lot of the Division III school, high-end Division III and Division II schools could absolutely compete at the Division I level in lacrosse. So it's there's obviously the financial aid or the money or how much they are allowed to play. There's certain rules and regulations that are different for each division, but in terms of competitive level, like the highest level Division II and Division III are about as good as most of the Division I programs that aren't in the top, I would say 40 or 50 in lacrosse. And that is something you have to like. I know on the lacrosse piece, but it's obviously going to be very, very different for each individual sport. So yeah, and I guess to the earlier question about timelines, I would say that's the other driving thing that differentiates the divisions. Is I would say Division I recruiting in lacrosse is they're mostly done with their classes by the students' junior years, whereas the Division II and the Division III schools have a later timeline, and that's usually into senior, all the way into sometimes May or June of senior year. So I would say those are the differentiators with lacrosse, but again, it's going to be very different sport by sport. So. The school Dave's at right now is in the same bucket. They would beat a number of Division I programs if we're being honest. So
we have around 5 minutes left. Another question that we just got speaks to academics in terms of playing sports. And the student is asking, are there certain majors or academic classes that you can't take if you're playing a sport competitively? So just in terms of balancing academics and athletics, are there certain things that you can't do academically if you're playing certain sports?
It's probably going to vary from university to university, from D1 to D2 to D3. There's no restrictions that a student would have. We have athletes at Pitt. These are D1 athletes who are engineering students. They are computing and information science students, which I mentioned them because those are typically majors that are quite intensive in terms of the academic course load and the coursework. The only time I've seen issues with students at Pitt and probably other universities as well that offer nursing programs. Our nurses, for example, begin doing clinical rotations in the hospitals in their sophomore year, and that is sometimes an 8 to 5 every day, 3 or 4 or 5 days a week commitment. So I'm not saying no, you can't be a D1 athlete and choose that at most institutions, but I just know that just personally, again, speaking about University of Pittsburgh, that's the one that would be the most difficult to juggle the academic commitments with the athletic commitments. I'm sure it's doable, but it's the one that's most challenging, I believe.
And I would say that there would be no academic limitations as far as majors you could select at Division III institutions, certainly at OU, and I'd say any other Division III institution. Another thing we get asked a lot is like, can I travel abroad? And I mean, travel abroad is a big deal in college, and the answer is yes, you can. And I would think the answer would be yes for any institution at any level. There may be some restrictions, based on when your season is, but if you want to get overseas, you'll have that opportunity. And some teams, I mean, we have this at OU, and I'm sure some Pitt teams and teams from many different institutions go abroad also. I mean, they as teams go overseas, and it doesn't happen maybe a lot, but it does happen. And so that's another thing to keep in mind.
So we have a little less than 5 minutes left. I'm going to reinterpret a question that was just submitted. It's asking about getting on a coach's radar. So I'm assuming if you're trying to kind of get on a coach's radar or a school's radar for the first time, is it best practice to just email a coach your highlight tapes right away? Like if you're just starting it, what should be your first step to kind of get on that university's radar?
Fill out the questionnaire, email the coach your highlights, unless you're going to have better highlights in a couple other weeks. That would be, there's no impression like the first impression. So I would just say, I would say fill out a. That's what we do with all of our student athletes, is we help curate a list of what they're using their voice and what they want and what they're looking for and what their families are looking for. And then they reach out to every single school with an email and a highlight, and fill out the questionnaires that Barry was providing in the link earlier. So I would say do it. The only sometimes caveat we sometimes have is if you're going to have better highlights coming up, then sometimes it's, and especially if you're a sophomore or junior, maybe it's prudent to wait for those highlights. So
I would say you could certainly send the email, but email your highlights. But I also say another option for you is to email the coach and ask the coach how to proceed. And would you like my highlights? And maybe the coach says yes, maybe the coach says wait. Another thing that I would say to you is, look at us in admissions as advocates for you, as partners with you in the process. We want, I say frequently to students, I say, Ohio Wesleyan, I get my paycheck from Ohio Wesleyan, but I work for you. And I'm sure Barry would say the same thing. We work for you. So you reach out to the coach and you're not hearing from the coach, contact us. Contact the admissions representatives at whatever school and say, hey, I reached out to the coach, I'm not hearing from the coach. And maybe the coach can, to use an athletic terminology, maybe the coach can run a little interference for you and or maybe the admissions rep, can run a little interference for you and get a response from the coach. So.
The only tidbit I would add to that is with that first intro email, depending on the season and the timing of it, if you know that you'll be active at camps or tournaments in the summer, you could also include that as well. Just saying that, hey, here's my highlight tape, but here's events that I'm going to be participating this upcoming summer. Because many coaches, they travel, or somebody on their team will travel to these different events. So we have around less than 2 minutes, less than a minute. Any quick 15, 20-second closing remarks that we want to kind of pass on to the students?
Yeah, I saw a question. There was a question in there about how I believe it's how far in advance of the start of the school year can practice begin. I think it's about a week for us. I mean, the football team's in, the soccer team's in, and might be different for different divisions. But I'll leave it at that and leave it to my colleagues. And it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I definitely absolutely appreciate the opportunity to be here and share information about University of Pittsburgh and more importantly, Division I athletics in general. There are a lot of great schools out there. My mom used to say something like there's a lid for every pot. And I think that means not just academics, but that means athletics and whatever you're looking for to find the best place for you. You will find that lid. You absolutely will find that lid. So good luck to all of you.
Yeah, thanks again. It was wonderful to be here with such great colleagues and everyone else. And thanks for the questions. You can never be too, I would say, you can never be too, don't be afraid of being annoying a little bit. If you want something, go out and get it. And I think that's sometimes you have to to the earlier point, you have to be realistic about where you can play and where you're admissible and all these other things. But if you want something, like, keep reaching out. If a coach, you're not hearing from a coach, maybe not every single day, but reach out bi-weekly. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone. So I would say if you want something, do your best to go out and get it, and that you're going to be your best advocate, and you're and rely around the people around you, but don't think you're being annoying. Like, think you're trying to get something that is important to you.
So thank you to my panelists, and thank you to all attendees, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the conference. Bye-bye.